the most disappointing title reigns of all time. Now, usually when UFC fighters are hyped up as the next superstar, the next GOAT of their division, it usually doesn't pan out. Most of the time, it's because of injuries, fighters pulling out, they have disappointing performances, the judges. It could be a bunch of things. It's not always their fault. But that's what we're going to be talking about today. UFC title reigns that did not live up to the hype. Starting off with number one, Khabib. Now this sucks because I actually think that Khabib did have GOAT potential. I thought that he was, actually very entertaining, very good fighter, but he just stopped way too soon. And on top of that, he never really faced the grapplers of his division. I don't think that he was like overrated per se, because I think that most people nowadays don't have him in like the top 5. People used to have him at like 1 or 2, something crazy. But he never really faced, Charles Oliveira or even Islam Makhachev, guys like that. And you could say, oh, he would beat those guys, but we never really got to see, because maybe he was better than those fighters. But you take a guy like Kamaru Usman, right, who it looked like he was better than Leon, but he just got caught, and that does hurt your legacy if you just get caught. So the fact that he only really fought strikers, that definitely, was disappointing. And on top of that, after the McGregor fight, which was such a massive pay-per-view, I think the best-selling pay-per-view of all time for the UFC, he did capitalize on the hype, but he only fought twice after, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure he only fought Poirier and Gaethje, and that was it. We never got to see him go up to 170, which, Islam Makhachev is now doing. He never got to face Usman or the GSP fight. We never got any of that, so that was pretty disappointing. But moving on, Islam Makhachev very close to Khabib. I think that his title reign was disappointing at 155, but it's not necessarily his fault, It was mainly the pullouts of other fighters. 2 of his title wins have massive asterisks. I mean, you have the Volk rematch, which, it has a massive asterisk. Not his fault. That was Oliveira's fault and Volk's fault for taking the fight. And then the Moicano fight, again, an asterisk, but mainly Arman's fault. So that's not on Islam, but still, it's disappointing. We never really got to see the Volk rematch on full camp, which definitely was disappointing. And after he beat Oliveira, he didn't really dominate as easily as he did before, because he dominated kind of Oliveira, and then he had a close fight with Volk, no shame in that, close fight with Poirier. Again, no shame in this, but it still is kind of disappointing than how he was favored, -400, -600, stuff like that. So that, was also kind of disappointing. I still think he's the pound for pound number 1. And we never got to see the Arman Tsarukyan fight. The rematch, again, not his fault, but still. And we never got to see the Ilya fight. I don't think that he's ducking Ilya, but still, it's very annoying. I feel like his hype, it didn't really live up to it. It was close. Some really entertaining fights. The Poirier fight was very entertaining. He stood in the pocket, got a crazy finish. But yeah, Islam Makhachev, his title reign, I feel like did not really live up to the hype of what I was expecting after he beat Oliveira. Yes, he defended his belt, but it wasn't against the same opponents and in the same fashion I thought it was going to be. Still a great fighter, but moving on to the next guy, Leon Edwards. He started off his title reign amazing, crazy story, crazy comeback, knockout against the pound for pound Kamaru Usman, absolutely insane. But after that, it was just all downhill. He had so much aura after he beat Usman. Everyone was a Leon Edwards fan, a lot of people. And then the Usman trilogy, which was somewhat entertaining. It wasn't bad, but he didn't knock him out. It still was a good win. But really after that is when things started to go downhill. You had the Colby fight, massive buildup, and then he kind of shits the bed. Not really entertaining. He clearly wins, but just a disappointing fight. He lost a lot of stock. He wasn't really likable after the third Usman fight. He didn't want to fight Bilal. He didn't want to fight Shavkat. It seemed like he didn't want to fight anyone. And then he finally fights Bilal, loses the fight, boring fight. And a lot of us were expecting Leon to go out, get a few defenses, maybe not be, GSP or anything, but defend his belt a few more times, beat Bilal, maybe even beat Shavkat, and then maybe he loses, something like that. He still was young. He was like 32 in his prime when he lost, and Bilal was kind of older. So this was another one that was pretty disappointing. And then moving on to Sean O'Malley. He could get the belt back, but he was talked about as the next UFC star, the superstar, the savior of the UFC. and it just didn't pan out. You know, he knocks out Aljo in similar fashion to McGregor Aldo. We get those two comparisons, massive hype, and then he gets a layup. He avoids Merab and he fights Cheeto, who didn't deserve it. It was an entertaining fight, but it wasn't competitive. His stock was still rising, and then they finally do the Merab fight in the Sphere. It's all lined up for a Sean O'Malley knockout, and he lost in pretty boring fashion. And after that, he doesn't fight for a while. He's one of those guys where, yeah, he has like a cool, aesthetic or whatever, but his personality doesn't really carry him. I think what makes Sean O'Malley interesting is his fight style. He is a very entertaining fighter. He has crazy knockouts. Even when he doesn't get the knockout, like against Cheeto, he still is very entertaining, very good, amazing striker. So when he doesn't have a good performance, it really hurts his stock. Kind of similar to Leon, except he's way more entertaining than Leon in the octagon and outside, but still, this was another one. I was really expecting him to be the next 135 GOAT. Maybe even he beats Umar, but Merab kind of took that from him. Merab kind of took all of his star power, beats Umar, crazy personality, and a pretty entertaining fighter too. But yeah, this was another one that I feel like did not live up to the hype. Moving on to the next one, Francis Ngannou. He was deemed as kind of the scariest fighter ever. You had Dana White talking about him. People were really into the hype of Francis, and, it made sense. He knocks out Stipe, the heavyweight GOAT, in the rematch in crazy fashion. He has all the hype, and outside of that, he only fought one other time against Ciryl Gane, and he didn't even have the finish. It was kind of a competitive back and forth. It was mildly entertaining with Francis, wrestling, which was shocking. But for replay value, it wasn't really a great fight. I get he took it while he was injured. There was a massive storyline. And then afterwards, he just, went on, left the UFC, and we never got the Jon Jones fight. So I feel like for his title reign, I really was expecting crazy knockouts, somewhat active, for heavyweight, because he wouldn't be taking a ton of damage. And we just didn't get that, He wasn't as bad as Jones, where he held up the belt for super long, but he still kind of held the belt for like a year or two where he didn't fight. Again, I get he was injured, but still, not necessarily his fault, but pretty annoying and overall disappointing. I love Francis, but it was a disappointing title reign, only one title defense. Moving on to the last guy, very similar, Jon Jones. For Jon Jones, I'm mainly talking about his heavyweight title reign. He took way too long to bulk up, and he was coming off of a loss, in my opinion, to Dominic Reyes. And because of that, we missed out on the Francis fight. So it already was off to like a bad start. He beat Ciryl Gane, but after he beat Gane in impressive fashion and he got his hype back, it took him 18 months and one pullout for him to fight again, and it was against Stipe, where the fight, if it would have happened 2022, 2021, maybe even 2023, there would have been a little bit of hype. But the fact it took so long and there was Tom Aspinall right there, no one cared. And then afterwards, he hasn't fought for over or about a year now. It looks like he's going to retire and he'll never fight Tom Aspinall. The biggest fight the UFC could put on and one of the biggest fights of Jon Jones's career. Definitely a disappointing title reign. I was really expecting him to be active. He said he wanted to be active to fight Stipe in July, 4 months after he beat Ciryl Gane and took no damage. He ends up waiting in over a year, injuries, and he doesn't fight any of the other contenders. And it was a layup fight, non-competitive. No one was excited for it. But yeah, those are the most disappointing title reigns in my opinion. Let me know what you disagree with. But yeah, that is it for me. And yeah.